ATA for ruining my mom's marriage? My mom blames me for her husband filing for divorce, and it's tearing our family apart. I need to know if I'm really the one at fault here. My mom married him when I was 10 years old. For some context, my real dad died before that, and his memory has always been incredibly important to me. He was my dad, and that was that. When my stepdad came into the picture, he made it clear that he wanted kids, but my mom couldn't have any more children. So he decided that he would be fine with just being my dad. The problem was, I never saw him that way, and I never accepted him in that role. We got along okay on the surface. It wasn't like we were constantly fighting. But it clearly disappointed him whenever he brought up the idea of adopting me and I said no, or whenever I used his first name instead of calling him Dad. He would always call me his daughter, and I hated it, but I never directly said anything to him about it. I didn't want to be cruel. Instead, I thought my actions would send a clear message. Whenever someone else, a teacher, a friend's parent, a stranger, referred to him as my dad, I would always politely correct them. I thought he would understand that nothing was going to change on my side. I had a dad. He was just the man married to my mom. Then, a few months ago, everything blew up because of a school project. For my art class, we had an assignment to create a piece based on our parents. I did a portrait of my mom and a portrait of my dad, my real dad, based on my favorite photograph of him. It was a very personal project for me. It wasn't really supposed to be seen by anyone else outside of class. I certainly never thought it would turn into the reason for a marital breakdown. My teacher, who meant well, emailed the artwork to my mom. She wrote about how talented I was and thought my mom should encourage my art more. My mom showed it to her husband, and that was it. For him, seeing that portrait of my dad and seeing me call him Dad in the title of the piece was the final straw. He sat my mom down and told her he couldn't do it anymore. He said he couldn't live his life without ever being a real parent. He thought he could be that for me, but he realized I had never given him a chance, and he couldn't wait around for me to maybe feel different when I was 40 years old. He's 51, and he told her he could still find a woman who would give him kids of his own. Just like that, he left and filed for divorce. As he was moving out, he told me he hoped I'd regret rejecting him someday because I had no idea how good I could have had it. Ever since then, my mom has placed all the blame squarely on my shoulders. She told me I needed to make it up to him and beg him to come back so he wouldn't go through with the divorce. I told her I wasn't going to lie to him just to get him back. She argued that he's been in our lives for almost as long as my real dad was, and that he would have been there to walk me down the aisle one day and be a grandfather to my future kids. Now, she said, there's nobody. She literally asked me, "Who are you going to call your father figure now?" I told her the truth. I never called him my father figure. That role had always been filled by my grandpas. My mom said the fact that I would even fight with her about this after ruining her marriage just shows how little I care about her happiness. I told her that I love her, and that's exactly why I tried my best to get along with him all these years. I said, "It's not like I wanted someone else when Dad died, but I knew you did, so I accepted him into our household. But I was never going to let someone else be my dad just so they would stay as your husband." She claims I'm just making excuses, and that I should feel more shame for ruining such a good thing for her. So, ATA? My ex and my best friend? They didn't see this coming. It all started with what felt like a typical, brutal breakup. I was completely heartbroken and totally blindsided, the whole miserable works. But the real knife to the heart came just 2 weeks later when I found out my best friend, let's call her Sarah, had started dating my ex. The betrayal from both of them was a 1-2 punch that left me reeling. This was Sarah, the person I'd trusted with everything, the one I'd been there for through every crisis and celebration. For her to do this felt like the ultimate backstab. My initial reaction was pure, unfiltered rage. I drafted 1,000 angry texts in my head, imagining the dramatic confrontations. But after the initial storm of anger passed, I had a moment of clarity. Why waste my energy on a scene? Why give them the satisfaction of knowing they destroyed me? I realized the best revenge wouldn't be about screaming or pleading. It would be about silence and success. I decided I would get my payback, just not in any way they were expecting. So, for the next few months, I played my part perfectly. I let them believe their narrative, that I was still at home, shattered and devastated. But behind the scenes, I was a woman on a mission. I channeled all that hurt into fuel. I landed a fantastic new job that I was actually excited about. I started hitting the gym, not for them, but for me, feeling myself grow stronger with every passing week. I even went on a few dates with people who treated me with the respect I deserved. The most powerful part? I shared none of this with them. My social media was a quiet, peaceful blank slate. I let them assume I was still wallowing in self-pity. Then, the moment I'd subtly been waiting for arrived. Sarah reached out to me. Her message was full of apologies and tears, saying how much she missed me and desperately wanted to make things right. But by then, her words meant nothing. I had already moved on to a better place, and there was no room for her in my new life. My response was calm, cold, and final. I'm glad you two are happy together. Honestly, I'm better off. Let's just not talk anymore. I'm perfectly fine. But here's where it gets really good. A couple of weeks after that, I ran into my ex at a local bar. He looked me up and down, clearly awkward, and tried to stumble through some small talk. I didn't flinch. I just gave him a genuine, easy smile, leaned in a little, and said, "You know, I really think things worked out for the best. You're with Sarah now, and that's great for you. But me? I've found someone way better." And I wasn't lying. I had found a better life and a better version of myself. As I turned and walked away without another word, I could feel his confusion hanging in the air. I knew the questions were already spinning in both their heads. Who is it? What does she mean? How did she move on so completely? The ultimate revenge wasn't staged. It required no drama and no confrontation. It was simply me living my best life, thriving without a single thought of them, and letting them get a fleeting glimpse of just how completely unfazed I was by their entire existence. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Nothing burns quite like being forgotten. Girlfriend cheated on me and destroyed my reality. I don't even know where to begin. It feels like my entire reality for the last 4 years was just an elaborate illusion she created. The person I loved never really existed. It all came crashing down a week ago. I woke up randomly at 2 a.m., a gut feeling pulling me out of sleep, only to find her side of the bed empty and cold. She was just gone. Her phone location was turned off, something she never did. I called. I texted. Nothing but silence. That feeling of dread in my stomach was unbearable. She finally texted back around 5 a.m., claiming she had an early morning shift at work. But I knew that was a lie. Her location services, which always updated when she was home, had stopped at midnight. She had left at midnight. My heart was pounding. I asked her, straight up, to send me a picture of where she was to prove it. She left me on read. That's when I knew for sure. I called off work that day. I couldn't function. I was a mess of anxiety, just waiting. At 7:15 a.m., I saw her car pull up. But when she saw my shoes by the door, a sign I was still home, she didn't even come inside. She just drove off, and I saw him in the passenger seat. The worst part? She was wearing the kind of lazy, comfortable outfit you only wear at home. She hadn't been at work. She'd been with him. 2 days later, I finally got her to talk to me, and she looked me right in the eyes and lied. She denied everything. She gaslit me, making me feel like I was the crazy one, paranoid and insecure. She blamed the entire downfall of our relationship on me. And then, while I was there, vulnerable and begging for the truth, for us to fix it, she broke up with me. I was the one pleading for a liar to stay. It took me a day to come to my senses. The evidence was all there, staring me in the face. I had just refused to see it because the truth was too painful to accept. The ultimate disrespect? She did it in her home, in my side of the bed, on my favorite spot on the couch. I started digging. I reached out to her friends back in her home state, and the person they described was a stranger. They told me about a pattern of lies, about how she constantly plays the victim, even in situations where her best friend was the one who actually needed support. They revealed her most horrific lie. She had even fabricated a story about being assaulted in the past. Hearing that, it just shattered any remaining piece of the image I had of her. I am so lost. I miss the woman I thought she was, but the real her is someone I know I can never go back to. I called her out on all of it, every single lie. And you know what she did? She doubled down. She victimized herself all over again. I used to blame her abusive upbringing for her issues, but not anymore. This was all her. I am mentally and physically destroyed. This betrayal has warped my perception of everything. I went out recently, and when a woman tried to talk to me, I felt a wave of disgust. Not at her, but at the entire situation. All I could think about was the betrayal. Part of me still wants to talk to her. I want to scream at her and tell her she's a pathological liar who needs serious help. She always swore she'd never cheat. She even cut off a friend for doing it multiple times. The irony is a full circle moment that's almost too cruel to believe. And I'm almost certain she cheated on me multiple times with this same guy. My brain tries to protect my sanity by refusing to put all the evidence together, but I know it's there. A tiny, broken part of me still wants to fix things, but I know that's impossible. I could never look at her the same after this level of disrespect toward me, toward her friends, toward everyone who trusted her. I gave her everything. She manipulated me into getting an apartment with her, making me give up my plans to live with my close friend. And in the final, cruelest twist, when her best friend confronted her after hearing the truth, my ex just made fun of me. She mocked the things I did for her. In that moment, it became clear I never mattered to her. Not really. She told me I was insecure and controlling, but that was after I had completely changed myself for her. I went through hell and back to support her when she had no money and no one else. And this is how I was repaid. My world is in pieces. But I have to believe that on the other side of this pain, there's a life far away from her lies. My father-in-law hates me because of my appearance and is turning my relationship into hell. I need to get this off my chest because I feel like I'm living in a nightmare, and it's all because of my girlfriend's father. Basically, my girlfriend, 24, and I, 25, started dating about a year ago. Right from the beginning, she was upfront with me. She told me her father was a hardcore misogynist with a ton of crazy, controlling rules for her. We're talking a 10 p.m. curfew, never spending the night away from home, things like that. I won't go into all the details out of respect for her, but let's just say his view of women is beyond outdated. It's toxic. Even knowing all that, I tried to be cordial with him at the start. I wanted to make a good impression. But there were two incidents he absolutely lost his mind over. First, she chose to spend New Year's Eve with me. And second, we had a really special night together once, and she didn't come home until the next morning. Okay, so fast forward. We actually broke up for a few months. Then, 2 weeks ago, we decided to give it another shot. But this time, she decided not to tell her father. And I started to notice something strange. She wasn't complaining about him harassing her for going out anymore. Before, he would constantly blow up her phone when she was with me, but it had gone completely silent. Well, the silence broke last week. We went to a concert that ran a little late, and she got home about an hour after her curfew. And, coincidentally, her father had found out we were back together just 4 days before. He completely freaked out about her being late. She didn't tell me about the blow-up until a few days later. She finally told me what he said. He kept screaming that she was the only one who would ever want to date me. That's why we got back together. And apparently, he said a lot more offensive, personal things about me. Now, here's the kicker about this guy. He's a bald, older man who's obsessed with showing off his muscles. He works as a security guard, but totally acts like he's a real cop. And he looks down on me because I'm a bigger guy, a little chubby, and I guess I look like a nerd. Oh, and I have straight, long, blonde hair. People often tell me I look like Corpse Grinder from the band Cannibal Corpse, which I think is pretty cool, but he clearly does not. Today, things escalated even further. They had another huge argument after we went out. According to her, he was cursing my name, calling me every name in the book. And then he turned on her. He called her a whore and told her that if she continues to see me, he's going to kick her out of the house. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why doesn't she just move out? It's complicated. I currently live with my mother to take care of her because she has some serious health problems. My girlfriend doesn't make a ton of money, And even though she could technically afford a cheap place, she's terrified. She's afraid that if she moves out and then loses her job, she'd have nowhere to go because her father would never take her back. There's another layer to it, too. She has a teenage sister still living in that house. She told me she doesn't want to move out and abandon her little sister to suffer his abuse alone. He insults and berates the sister, too. So I'm stuck. I'm being personally attacked for how I look by a man who doesn't know me. The woman I love is being verbally abused and threatened with homelessness. And we both feel powerless to stop it. This man's hatred is literally turning our relationship into hell. My girlfriend keeps comparing me to other men. What should I do? Hey, everyone. I need some outside perspective on a relationship issue that's starting to really get to me. I'm 25, my girlfriend is 26, and we're down here in Texas. We've been officially together for about 3 months now. On the surface, things are great. She's very attractive, fun to be around, and most of the time, she seems like a really good girlfriend. But there's this one recurring problem that I can't seem to shake. She has this weird habit of constantly comparing me to other men. It didn't start all at once. The first time it happened was after we first had sex. She told me how much fun it was with me because it didn't hurt. And then she just kept going. She elaborated that it used to hurt a lot with her 2 previous ex-boyfriends because they were, and I quote, too big. I didn't really know how to process that in the moment. It was a compliment wrapped in a really uncomfortable comparison. Then I landed a new job as a paralegal. I was really excited to tell her, and her first response was, "That's so cool." But immediately after, she pivoted to talking about her friend's boyfriend, who is a full-fledged lawyer, and she went on about how incredibly smart he is. My accomplishment suddenly felt like just a stepping stone to talk about someone else. The most recent example really stung. I just bought a used 2020 BMW M4. I've always loved sports cars, and I've worked hard to be able to afford this. I was so proud to show it to her. Her first reaction? She told me about how her ex only ever bought new cars and how he owned a Porsche. It felt like she completely dismissed my achievement to bring up her ex's supposedly better taste. I've talked to her about this. I've told her multiple times that it makes me feel uncomfortable and that I don't like it when she compares me to her exes or other men she knows. She'll apologize and stop for a few days, but it always seems to creep back into the conversation. I'm starting to feel like I'm not being seen for who I am, but instead being constantly measured against some invisible scoreboard of other men. It's draining my excitement about our relationship and making me feel insecure. So, what should I do? How do I get her to understand that this isn't just a minor quirk, but something that's genuinely damaging how I feel about us? ATA for taking my laptop back after my boyfriend's sister stole from us? I need to know if I'm the one in the wrong here. I'm a 21-year-old woman, and I own a house with my 22-year-old boyfriend. The issue is with his 17-year-old sister. She seems to operate under the belief that she has an all-access pass to our home anytime she wants, simply because her brother lives there. The incident happened last night. My boyfriend and I were already fast asleep when, at around 11:30 p.m., his sister just walked right in. The noise woke my boyfriend up. She asked him if she could take a beer from our fridge, and he told her a firm no. Apparently, she didn't like that answer. She threw a fit and slammed our bathroom door shut. My boyfriend assumed she was just having a tantrum and would leave afterward, so he came back to bed. A little while later, we heard the front door slam shut. My boyfriend got up to lock it, and we thought that was the end of it. We were wrong. This morning, I was putting groceries away and opened the drawer in the fridge where we keep our alcohol. It was completely empty. I had just bought a 24-pack of Seagrams on Thursday and had only had one. I asked my boyfriend if he'd moved them somewhere, and he said no. He reminded me that his sister had asked for one. He'd refused, and he thought she'd left. So I confronted her. Her story was that she was in our bathroom, and her friend must have come into the house and taken them. Now, this could be true, but it doesn't add up. My boyfriend only heard the door slam once. Our front door is old and won't close unless you slam it hard. If it had been open long enough for some mystery friend to walk in, go to the fridge, grab a whole 24-pack, and leave, my cat would have absolutely bolted out of the house. Her story was an obvious lie to avoid getting in trouble. After thinking it through, I told her I knew she was lying. And I added that even if she wasn't, she was still responsible for letting her friend steal from us. I told her she was being incredibly selfish and disrespectful. That's when she exploded. She went on a rant, calling me a bitch, accusing me of controlling her brother, and declaring that I wasn't family to her anymore. That last part really set me off. On top of the anger I already felt about her stealing from us and feeling entitled to our home, that comment pushed me over the edge. I went to her dad's house and talked to him. I apologized but said that since I was not family anymore, they would have to figure out another way for her to do her schoolwork because I was taking my laptop back. Her dad was completely fine with this decision. Now, she's even more furious. She's telling my boyfriend that he's dead to her and that he needs to get rid of me because I'm so controlling. It's hurtful. I've never been rude to her. I've actually been there for her through breakups and tough times. And she treats me like this because I had the audacity to be upset that she stole from me? So, am I the asshole? Edit/update. A lot of people are asking about the lock. We forgot to lock the door that night, which we usually do. There's a reason we're not always consistent. Our landlord lost the keys to the original lock. We bought a new door handle, but it doesn't fit the existing hole in the door. We're currently waiting for the landlord's permission to drill a bigger hole to install it. Update 2. Great news. We finally got the new door handle installed. I feel so much safer knowing my home and my belongings are secure. As for his sister, she's still throwing a massive tantrum and has officially disowned us as family. She sent my boyfriend and me long, angry paragraphs at 2 a.m. last night. She told my boyfriend he never sticks up for her and always takes my side, which is ironic because this is the first big argument she and I have ever had, and he's on my side because he is also furious that she was entering our house and stealing. She told me I need to grow up because I make every outing awkward and turn my boyfriend into a different person. For what it's worth, his mom agrees that I change him, but she says I've made him a better, happier, and goofier version of himself. My ex and her fiancé are denying our past, and now he's threatening to show up at my house. This whole situation honestly feels like something out of a bad soap opera, and I just need to get it off my chest. About 2 years ago, I was in a relationship with a girl for a little more than half a year. It wasn't just casual talking or flirting, it was a real relationship. We went on dates, we kissed, we spent time together like any couple would. There was no ambiguity about it. We were boyfriend and girlfriend. Unfortunately, things didn't last. The relationship ended mostly because of pressure from my father. It wasn't that we hated each other or that something dramatic tore us apart. It was outside circumstances, and we simply broke up. Fast forward to today, and she has moved on. She's now with a new guy who's not just her boyfriend, but her fiancé. Out of the blue, this man decided to message me. He told me that they're getting married next year and then asked me directly who she was to me in the past. I didn't see any reason to lie, so I told him the truth. She used to be my girlfriend. That's when everything started getting messy. Apparently, he went to her mom and confronted her about it. To my surprise, both my ex and her mother denied that anything ever happened between me and her. My ex is now even claiming that I was nothing more than a fan of hers. Hearing that honestly stung more than I expected. It felt like she was erasing a part of my life, as if our relationship had meant nothing at all. But it didn't stop there. Her fiancé messaged me again, and now he's demanding that I somehow prove that we dated. He even went as far as to threaten that he might show up at my house to talk about it in person. The whole thing feels ridiculous, but at the same time, it's stressing me out. The truth is, I don't owe either of them anything. I don't need to prove to a stranger that my past relationship was real. Still, the idea of someone showing up uninvited at my door isn't something I can just brush off. It makes me anxious and uneasy, like I'm being dragged into drama I never asked for. Right now, I feel completely stuck. Part of me wonders if I should just block him and move on, cut off all communication, and let them deal with their own insecurities. Another part of me thinks maybe I should confront him and set the record straight, if only to stop the harassment. And then there's the option of ignoring the whole situation, and hoping he eventually gets bored and goes away. But no matter which option I think about, I feel trapped between two extremes. I don't want to look weak, but I also don't want to get pulled any deeper into this ridiculous mess. ATA for blocking my wife after she wouldn't stop calling me at work? I'm a 27-year-old man, and I work night shifts in a dangerous job where I'm responsible for keeping an entire team safe. That means I have to be fully alert, focused, and clear-headed whenever I'm on the clock. Any distraction could literally put lives at risk. Yesterday, right before heading in, I had just woken up and was trying to get myself ready. That's when my wife, who is 25, texted me saying she wasn't doing well and wanted to talk. Even though I was exhausted, and even though I was pressed for time, I called her back because I didn't want to ignore her when she was clearly struggling. We talked for about 20 minutes. During the conversation, I mostly just listened to her. But at one point, I tried to be honest. I said that we both need to work on our relationship, and while I absolutely take responsibility for a lot of issues, I can't take all of it. That's when she got angry. I told her it hurt me that she wouldn't hear my side, and then she hung up on me. That's when things really escalated. After hanging up, she started calling and texting me nonstop. She told me that I was hurting her and that I had to answer her. I tried to explain calmly that I needed space and that she needed to stop, but she ignored me completely. It went from bad to worse when she even started calling my work phone, which is strictly meant for emergencies. This went on for nearly 2 hours. I was under so much stress that I finally had no choice but to block her, at least temporarily, just so I could focus on my job and keep my team safe. That's when she turned the situation around on me. She started saying that I abandoned her, that I was being controlling, that I was emotionally abusive, and that I didn't care about her at all. But it didn't stop there. She threatened to physically show up at my workplace if I didn't answer her calls. And to make things worse, she even got her mom and her friends to start calling me as well. From my perspective, I wasn't trying to be cruel. I wasn't trying to ignore her pain or dismiss her feelings. I was trying to protect my own boundaries and make sure I was capable of doing my job safely. Still, now she's saying that by blocking her and refusing to talk until I feel safe again, I was being abusive. And that's left me wondering, am I really the bad guy here? Edit for context. My wife and I have been together for 9 years. We don't have kids. Because of the nature of my job, I work away from home in 2-week rotations about 4 hours from where we live. Right now, I'm only 6 days into my current shift. For some background about me, I grew up with a narcissistic mother and was the family scapegoat. I went no contact with her 7 years ago. Because of that environment, I developed a people-pleasing habit where I just take on blame and responsibility to avoid conflict. I've been in therapy for over 5 years, and while I still struggle with shame and self-image, I've made a lot of progress. As for our marriage, it's always been a difficult relationship. Both of us came from broken homes, and we've both done therapy individually at different points. We also tried couples counseling for a while, but we stopped because she didn't want to continue. Another factor, about 6 months ago, I got a new boss at work who has been triggering a lot of my old trauma wounds. That forced me to start setting boundaries and learning to accept that sometimes people won't like me, and that's okay. It's been hard, but necessary. I also know that some of that stress has spilled over into our relationship, and I've been working on that with my therapist. For years, my coping mechanism in my marriage was to avoid conflict at all costs. I would agree with my wife on everything, even if it meant swallowing my own feelings. But recently, I've started to speak up instead of fawning or giving in. That's been a huge change for us, and I think it's part of why we've been clashing more. Because of this incident, I've actually arranged for coverage at work and taken a couple of days off. My team safety is the top priority, and I wasn't in the right headspace. As for my marriage, I don't know what this all means yet. What I do know is that I need some space and time to process everything. To everyone who has offered support and perspective, thank you. It means more than I can say. My brother lost his job as a doctor and is angry that I won't let him move in with me. This is something I never thought I'd be sharing, but here I am. My brother is furious with me because I refuse to let him move into my home. And while part of me feels guilty, I know deep down there is absolutely no way it can work. My brother was a doctor. He's not anymore. He lost his job, and on top of that, he's being investigated for fraud. I'm not a doctor myself, so I'll try to explain what happened as best as I can. In my country, the healthcare system only covers the cost of semaglutide if it's prescribed for diabetes. It isn't covered for any other reason, so if someone wanted it for weight loss, for example, they would have to pay for it themselves. There's no way to get around that rule, or at least, there's not supposed to be. There's a certain diabetes test that doctors like my brother would perform. I don't know the exact medical name, but I do know the process. A patient would have to fast no food, no drink, and then they'd go to the doctor's office and get tested. Afterward, they would drink a special liquid and then get tested again. The results would show whether or not they had diabetes. But here's where my brother went wrong. He was telling his patients to eat before both tests. Doing this skewed the results, and it made it look like the person had diabetes even when they didn't. That way, they could qualify for healthcare coverage and get semaglutide without paying out of pocket. I don't know exactly how my brother got caught. I do know that some of the patients he treated ended up in the hospital, and I can only assume that drew attention to what he was doing. Whatever the case, it was discovered that he had misused a prescription medication and manipulated test results. Because of that, he's already been told that he can never work as a doctor in our country again. On top of losing his career, he's under investigation for fraud against the healthcare system. Now, because of all this, he wants to move in with me. But here's the problem. If he came to live with me, he wouldn't be working. He would expect me to cover all the expenses and provide for him, and he has no idea how long he'd be staying. I told him no, and now he's furious with me. The truth is, it simply isn't possible. I live in a studio apartment. There isn't space for another person, let alone someone staying indefinitely. Financially, I'm stable enough to take care of myself, but that's it. Supporting someone else, especially with no clear end in sight, is just not realistic. Our parents live in a retirement community and are on fixed pensions. They don't have money to spare, and they definitely don't have space for him. Our grandfather is in assisted living, and again, he can't help either. So now my brother insists I'm the only one who can help him. When I stood firm and told him no, he lashed out. He called me a bad sister. He said he's spent all of his money on his legal problems, and now it's my responsibility to take care of him. He even tried to justify it by saying that since I'm an electrician, and I sometimes pick up extra work as an auto mechanic, I could just do more mechanic work once he's living with me. But the more I think about it, the angrier I get. Why should I be forced to sacrifice my peace, my space, and my livelihood just because of his mistakes? He's the one who committed fraud. He's the one who jeopardized his medical career. He's the one who made choices that led to patients being harmed and his license being stripped. None of that is on me. I don't think it's fair for him to push this burden onto me, and I'm upset that instead of taking accountability, he's blaming me for refusing to fix problems he created. So no, I won't let my brother move in with me. And even if he can't see it, I know I'm not the villain in this story. My partner left me for an arranged marriage. Hey everyone. I'm a 23-year-old woman, and lately I've been completely heartbroken. My partner, who is 22, just ended our relationship to go through with an arranged marriage in his home country, all because his mother told him to. What makes this so much worse is the fact that he kept this from me for almost an entire month. He hid it, deflected when I noticed something was off, and only told me when it was already too late. That alone feels like such a betrayal, but the way he carried it makes the pain cut even deeper. When I asked why, his justification was that his mother is ill and might not live for many more years. Apparently, one of her last wishes is to see her son married before she passes. But instead of telling me or being honest earlier, he just decided to comply with her wishes in secret. Now, you might be wondering why he didn't simply ask to marry me. And the answer is painful. He admitted it because I'm not of his ethnic origin. His mother would never approve of him marrying a foreign woman. He said convincing her would cause her more stress, which he doesn't want to put her through given her poor health. Hearing that was devastating. What hurt the most was when he told me that if his mom were healthier, if she were in a better place, then he would fight for our relationship. That made me feel like his love for me was conditional. Like I wasn't worth fighting for if things got complicated. And the irony of it all? We weren't even planning on marrying anytime soon. Both of us agreed that we were way too young, and our plan was to consider marriage in our late 20s, once we were both established. But all of that was thrown away the moment his mother stepped in. For him, family will always be the top priority, even if that means throwing away everything we built together. During the breakup itself, I could tell he didn't really want to let go. He asked me for one last goodbye hug, not once, but 3 separate times. He held on like he wanted to stay, but in the end, he still went through with it. That's what broke me. And then came the part that made me feel sick. He suggested that once things settled down, we could be friends. He even said he'd like to treat this whole breakup like it never happened and, one day, introduce me to his arranged wife. I honestly don't even know how he could say that. Just the thought of looking them in the eye together feels unbearable right now. Maybe my mindset will change years down the line, but right now, that would destroy me. This hasn't just affected me either. Our mutual friends have gotten dragged into the fallout. He pulled away from all of them, too. Even his own roommate, the person who actually introduced us in the first place, feels blindsided by his actions. Everyone is hurt by the way he handled this, and none of them look at him the same anymore. As for me, I feel disposable. Like I could just be thrown away because it was convenient. Yes, he told me that I'll always hold a special place in his heart, even once he's married. But those words don't erase the injustice. They don't take away the betrayal. And they certainly don't make me feel any less used. Even if, one day, he regrets this decision and tries to come back, I know I'll never look at him the same way again. No apology he gave me on that day, or any apology he could ever give in the future, will undo the damage that's been done. I just feel broken, and I don't know how long it's going to take to heal. I didn't say I love you at my sister's wedding, but I knew it. I honestly didn't expect anything life-changing to happen at my sister's wedding. I thought my role was simple: show up, smile for the pictures, help out where I could, give a half-decent toast, and maybe sneak an extra slice of cake without anyone noticing. What I didn't expect: to have a quiet, personal emotional meltdown, and of all places, it happened next to the shrimp cocktail tray. But let me back up a little. At the time, my girlfriend and I had been together for about a year. Things between us were good easy even. We hadn't had any big fights, there were no glaring red flags, and the relationship just worked. We'd met through mutual friends, clicked almost instantly, and from there it just flowed naturally. But here's the thing, I hadn't said the words yet. You know the ones. I love you. It wasn't that I didn't care about her, I did, more than I'd admitted to myself. But I wasn't sure yet if it was love or if it was just something really good that hadn't been tested by time. So I waited. Then came my sister's wedding. Like most weddings, it was absolute chaos. Kids were running around fueled by way too much sugar. There were last-minute wardrobe crises, and even a brief panic when my sister thought she'd forgotten her vows. Don't worry, she remembered them just in time. Through it all, my girlfriend, who barely knew my family, jumped straight into the madness, like she'd been part of it forever. She helped my mom calm down after a floral arrangement disaster. She danced with my 80-year-old grandpa like she was at prom. She held my sister's dress in the bathroom when she needed it. She didn't just survive the chaos, she embraced it. And I remember standing across the room, watching her in the middle of all of this, while my uncle, already halfway through his 4th whiskey, mumbled something beside me that I didn't even hear. Because in that moment, everything else faded. You know those movie scenes where the background blurs, the noise dulls, and the music swells softly in the background? That's exactly how it felt. Except this was real life, and instead of soft music, I heard my cousin's toddler screaming bloody murder because he dropped his juice box. But none of it mattered, because I was looking at her, really looking at her, and it was like something in my brain clicked into place. Not in a big fireworks and violins kind of way. No grand cinematic revelation. It was quieter than that. It was just this deep, steady thought. Oh, it's you. You're it. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't pull her aside and give some big, movie-worthy monologue. Instead, I danced with her. I let her steal fries off my plate. I held her hand the entire way home. But in my head, that was the moment I knew. And honestly, I think there's something kind of beautiful about realizing you're in love, not in some dramatic setting, but while standing next to a shrimp cocktail tray at a wedding. Entitled parents tried to Irish goodbye me while my girlfriend cooked them dinner. I've always had a complicated relationship with my parents. If I had to summarize the last few decades, I'd say this. My dad is stern, controlling, and emotionally volatile, and my mom is an overwhelming storm of anxiety. My father embodies the stereotypical, traditional husband role. He can be caring, but he keeps complete control over my mom. He dictates what she can do, when she comes home, what time she goes to bed, demands dinner on the table, and, by God, she does not talk back. My mom does have good qualities. She's generally kind and caring, but she's also a total doormat. She lets people, especially my dad, walk all over her. She's frustratingly spineless at times. Her go-to strategy is always taking the path of least resistance, and that created a rift between us. She constantly sided with my dad's awful behavior because appeasing him was easier than supporting me, including the time I found CP on his computer. I'll add an explanation about that later, since I know it'll catch people's attention. Now, my parents retired to Portugal, but they came back recently for a visit. For context, I had gone no contact with them for about a year, but we've somewhat patched things up. These days, our relationship is shallow, but civil enough. They were staying with friends at first, but my dad got offended. He felt he was doing too much compared to his friend's wife. He blew up and then asked to stay at my place instead. To my surprise, he was trying to be more considerate. He kept asking if it was okay to buy a mattress for the guest room, because he didn't want to make changes I wasn't comfortable with. It seemed like progress, but that effort didn't last. Here's where things started going downhill. My dad began offering help constantly. My girlfriend and I were in the process of moving, and he kept insisting he'd help us with the furniture. I told him no politely, but he kept offering again and again, even just minutes after I declined. Then one day, he handed me a package. Inside was a brand new $1,000 phone. I never asked for it, didn't need it, and honestly didn't want it. He never even mentioned it beforehand, just ordered it. After that, he started ordering other furniture for the guest bedroom without asking me first. A complete departure from his earlier, "Are you sure it's okay?" approach. He'd ask if I wanted food, I'd say no, and he'd bring food anyway. He took us out to dinner, then insisted I eat some of his food, literally demanded that I eat it. My mom later told me he even bought me a smoker, but returned it after sensing I didn't want his barrage of random gifts. I know, I probably sound ungrateful. I kept dodging his attempts to help or bond. But there's something deeply unsettling about the way he gives gifts. He refuses to take no for an answer. He gets passive-aggressive when I resist. And he completely ignores my boundaries. Then came Tuesday. Things seemed calm for once. My girlfriend had offered to cook a nice dinner, and my parents seemed genuinely excited. They kept commenting on how amazing it smelled. While the sauce was simmering, my girlfriend and I stepped out for a short walk. When we came back, my parents were standing at the door. I asked if they were heading out, and my dad said yes. My mom, with tears in her eyes, sputtered out, "Everything is going to be okay." That's when I realized something was off. They weren't just stepping out. They were leaving. I asked my mom if I'd see her again before she flew back to Portugal, and she said, "You're young. You can do whatever you want." I was completely stunned. What does that even mean? I've seen my dad get his feelings hurt over absolutely nothing and blow up before, so I wasn't shocked. But my girlfriend was furious. They literally tried to Irish goodbye us while she was in the kitchen making them dinner. We can only speculate what set my dad off, but honestly, I don't care. I'm done giving him chances to explain himself. I'd love to go into more detail about my family dynamics. I've been unpacking a lot of this lately, but I'll leave it here for now. Worth mentioning though, my relationship with my mom growing up was inappropriately enmeshed. Realizing that was a pretty big revelation for me. I'd love to hear from others about parents who give excessively, obsessively, or inappropriately. I'm struggling to process this behavior, and hearing different perspectives would help. If anyone wants clarification, I'm happy to explain more. Edit. About the CP. When I was 17, my father confiscated my phone because of my grades. About 6 months later, I went on his computer to find the router password so I could set up a Minecraft server. I thought it might be in his passwords folder. Big mistake. It was actually his pornography folder. And inside, I found things that completely shattered his image of being this tough, straight, masculine man. Among the files, I found nude images that had originally been on my phone, pictures an underage girlfriend had sent me, plus some artsy but topless photos of a friend. He had taken them off my phone and stored them in his porn folder. At the time, I posted on Reddit for advice. People told me to delete my post immediately because even mentioning those images could be considered admission of possession. Later, when I confronted my dad and ran away, he threatened to call the police on me. I told him I'd tell them he had CP. His response was that I'd be put on the sex offender registry because they were my images. I'd already read about cases where minors were charged for having their own photos, so I was too scared to involve the police. I went back home, and life was hellish for the next year. After I graduated, I joined the military and minimized contact with him. Eventually, after another dispute, I moved out for good and cut contact completely. Recently, I've spoken to him again, but our relationship is very superficial. Things didn't work out, and that's just how it is. I'm not a bad person for talking to my father again to test the waters. And I shouldn't have to justify not speaking to him until the day he dies. But the truth is, things between us are broken. I, 28M, made a mistake and my pregnant fiancé, 26F, left me. I'm writing this because I feel completely lost, heartbroken, and unsure of what to do next. I, 28M, had been with my fiancé, 26F, for about 2.5 years. For the most part, we had a really great relationship. We loved each other deeply and made a good team. But there was always one issue hanging over us, my job. I won't go into too much detail about what I do, but let's just say it's part of a special unit within law enforcement. It's not that dangerous compared to some things, but still enough that my fiancé worried about me constantly. And she's the type of person who worries a lot to begin with. From the very start, she made it clear she didn't like the risks I was taking. Still, we fell in love and decided to make it work. Eventually, we agreed that when a baby came along, I would change positions at work and take on something safer. Well, she got pregnant. It wasn't planned, but it happened, and we were both preparing for this huge step in our lives. She's 16 weeks along now. As soon as we found out, I went straight to my boss and requested a reassignment. They understood and gave me different, safer assignments. For a while, things were fine. But then a few days ago, everything went wrong. There was an emergency at work. A situation came up, and they needed someone with my specific experience to cover a task in my old unit. They asked me to step in. At first, I said no. I reminded them that I had promised my fiancé I wouldn't take on those kinds of assignments anymore. But the situation was serious, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was the only one who could handle it. Against my better judgment and against my promise, I said yes. I did the job, finished the assignment, and went home. But when I walked through the door, the apartment was empty. While I was away, my fiancé had called her friends, packed up her things, and left. No note, no explanation. Just gone. I tried calling her immediately, but I was already blocked. I tried texting. Nothing. I reached out from other phones, still nothing. Even her friends blocked me. It was like she disappeared from my life overnight. I asked some of our shared friends to check in on her, but she wouldn't answer them either. Finally, I reached out to her parents. They told me they think she overreacted, but they also said it wasn't their place to intervene. And that's where I'm stuck. My fiancé is gone. She's carrying our child, and I have no way to reach her. My heart is shattered, and I regret what I did more than I can put into words. I know I broke her trust. I know I shouldn't have taken that assignment. But it felt like an emergency, and I thought I was doing the right thing at the time. Now I feel like I've lost the woman I love, and maybe even my chance to be part of my child's life. I don't want to harass her or overwhelm her, but I desperately want her to forgive me. I want to be with her, and I want to be a father to our baby. I don't know what to do or how to reach her. Do I keep trying? Do I give her space and hope she comes back on her own? How do I show her that I made a mistake, but that I'm still the man who wants to keep his promise to her and our family? I feel like I've ruined everything, and I don't know how to fix it. Edit. Answering some common questions. I really don't want to give details about my job, but it's a specialized law enforcement unit. And no, it's not ICE. How did she know I took the assignment? I called her myself. I didn't want to lie about why I'd be late coming home. Did she know about my job when we first started dating? Yes. She knew what I did from the beginning, and she told me she didn't like it. But we were so in love that we decided to give it a try anyway. Ada for feeling extremely uncomfortable that my mother and sister still talk to my cheating ex. I, 28M, was cheated on by my girlfriend, 29F, after 2 years of dating. The only reason I even found out was because the guy she was cheating with discovered I existed. He reached out to me, explained he had no idea she had a boyfriend, and showed me everything, texts, pictures, the works. Of course, I immediately broke up with her. She moved out, and I told my family we had split, but I didn't go into details about what happened. Fast forward 3 months. My dad casually mentioned that my mom and younger sister were still in regular contact with her. I thought that was incredibly weird. I confronted them and finally explained the real reason for the breakup, that she cheated on me. To my face, they were sympathetic. They said they'd cut contact with her, which I assumed was the obvious thing to do anyway. I thought that was the end of it. But just a few days ago, I was at my parents' house for dinner. While sitting in the living room, I noticed my ex's name pop up as a notification on my little sister's phone. I asked her about it, and she immediately claimed it was someone else with the same name. I didn't believe her. So I reached out directly to my ex sure enough. She confirmed she's still in regular contact with my sister and occasionally with my mom as well. I felt my blood boiling. I immediately confronted my mom and sister again. I told them how weird it was to still be talking to the woman who had completely betrayed me. I explained that it felt like they didn't care about what I went through or how badly I was hurt. Instead of understanding, my mom jumped up and said she's a grown woman who can talk to whoever she wants. And my little sister? She threw out some nonsense about me being a typical man trying to control women and who they communicate with. At that point, I didn't say another word. I just left and haven't spoken to them since. My dad has tried to talk to them, but he says they won't listen. So, Ada for being extremely uncomfortable with this? And would I be wrong to cut ties with them until they can understand how messed up this is? I'm 7.7 seconds from exposing him. I'm the mother of a newborn. The father of my child is 26 and currently a starting player in the NFL for a very popular California team. We planned this pregnancy. It wasn't an accident, but the moment I told him I was expecting, he checked out. He abandoned me for a 38-year-old girlfriend. Yes, the twist. She previously identified as a lesbian. No shade, just the tea. After I got pregnant, he stopped showing up. He skipped every doctor's appointment, even though he'd made me schedule them around his availability and promised he would be there. He wasn't at the birth. Since the baby was born this spring, he's only seen our daughter once. To add insult to injury, he let his new girlfriend put her name all over my baby registry, even after I asked him not to. Meanwhile, there's a constant stream of chatter online. Girls on various apps brag about him flying them out, spending money on them, and sleeping with them unprotected. Yet when I asked this man for basics, a car seat, a stroller, even just to come and meet his child, he refused. He told me I should put him on child support, that the baby would be just a bill to him, and that he would never love our child because he didn't love me anymore. He said he would refuse to see our daughter until she was no longer dependent on me, because he wanted to be around her on his own timing. He even bragged about hiding assets so I'd get nothing but pennies. So I filed for child support because he told me to, and he was forced to settle. Now he accuses me of clawing money from him. To the public, he looks like the perfect package, successful, family-oriented, the kind of guy people cheer for. Behind the scenes, it's a different story. It's a double life. Part of me wants to release everything I know and burn Rome down, to expose him fully and publicly. But I'm terrified of what that would mean for my child. I don't want to tear her down or make her life harder if she has to see all of this one day. So I'm stuck with this rage and this protectiveness. I want justice. I want accountability. But I also want to protect my daughter from the fallout. Am I overreacting for leaving my girlfriend's family dinner after what her dad said? My girlfriend, 27F, recently invited me, 28M, to a family dinner to finally meet her parents. We've been together for almost a year, so of course, I wanted to make a good impression. I was nervous, but excited. It felt like the next step in our relationship. At first, everything was going fine. We sat down, made small talk, and the conversation was pretty normal. But then her dad started asking me about my job. I work in IT. It pays well, it's stable, and I enjoy it. But it's not flashy or high status like being a doctor, lawyer, or CEO. After a few questions, her dad smirked and said, "So basically you just sit behind a computer all day. Not exactly the kind of guy I imagined for my daughter." The table went quiet. Everyone laughed awkwardly, trying to brush it off. I tried to laugh too, even made a little joke to ease the tension. But then he doubled down. He added, "Maybe someday you'll get a real job so you can actually support a family." That one hit me in the gut. I felt my stomach drop. My girlfriend said, "Dad," but that was it. She didn't really defend me. She didn't stand up for me. I felt completely disrespected. So I excused myself as politely as I could. I said I wasn't feeling well and I left. Later that night, my girlfriend texted me. Instead of checking on how I felt, she told me that I embarrassed her by walking out. She said I should have just let it go because her dad was only teasing. Here's the thing, I don't think that was teasing. It didn't feel lighthearted. It felt like a straight-up insult. And the fact that my girlfriend didn't back me up at all, it stung. Now she's acting cold toward me. She even says I owe her family an apology for leaving the way I did. I don't think I overreacted. I think I did what I had to do to protect my self-respect. But now I'm stuck wondering, Reddit, am I overreacting for walking out? ATA for telling my homophobic dad and stepmom they don't have to come to my lesbian wedding if they don't want to. So, a little background first. I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I've been with my fiancé, who's 28, for about 3 years now. We're finally getting married in a few months. We've talked about it for a long time, but with everything going on in the world, we only just officially started planning. And honestly, I'm really excited. I feel proud and grateful that I get to marry the love of my life. Now, here's where the problem comes in. My dad, who's in his 50s, and my stepmom, who's in her 40s, have never been people I've been super close with. Our relationship has always been okay at best. They're very conservative, very religious, and it's never been a secret that they have some outdated, and let's be real, homophobic, views about LGBTQ plus people. Over the years, I've had some awkward conversations with them, but I've usually chosen to just keep my distance on that subject. Well, when I brought up my wedding plans, I made it clear that it was going to be a lesbian wedding. As in, I'm marrying a woman. Immediately, they both got very quiet. After a painfully long silence, my dad looked me in the eye and said he wasn't sure if he could attend because of his beliefs. He said he didn't know if he could support this kind of thing. Hearing that from my own father stung more than I can even describe. I didn't push him in the moment, but I left feeling really hurt. A few days later, my stepmom actually called me, and she didn't sugarcoat it. She said she didn't agree with that lifestyle, and that both she and my dad were uncomfortable with me marrying a woman. She made sure to add, "We're still family and we still love you, but we can't condone your choices." That's when I snapped. I told them, very plainly, that if they weren't comfortable being at my wedding, then they didn't have to come. I told them I wanted my wedding day to be filled with love, support, and joy, and I was not going to beg anyone to be part of it if they couldn't show up fully for me. I told them they weren't going to dictate my happiness. They did not take it well. My dad immediately said, "I'm your father. I should be allowed to have an opinion." And my stepmom chimed in with, "You're being disrespectful to our feelings." They both insisted that I was pushing them away, excluding them, and giving them an ultimatum. Now they're acting like they're the ones who are hurt, and it's left me second guessing myself. On the one hand, I truly do want them to be there. I want them to be part of my life and my marriage. But on the other hand, I don't want to feel like I have to beg them to accept my relationship. I thought I made it clear. I would love for them to come, but I'm not going to let their discomfort ruin my day. If they can't be there with love and support, then I'd rather they not be there at all. But now I'm stuck wondering, am I being unreasonable? ATA for telling my dad and stepmom they don't have to come to my wedding if they don't want to. Was this question my wife asked to trap? So here's the situation. My wife and I are currently on a trip together. She's been through menopause, and because of that, combined with the surgery she had, her sex drive is now basically zero. To be clear, we do not have an open marriage. We happen to be traveling in a country where prostitution is legal. In fact, it's regulated, prostitutes are licensed and tested. On our very first night there, my wife suddenly asked me if I wanted to go have sex with a prostitute. Now, my immediate reaction was no, and I had a couple of reasons for that. First off, the question itself felt like a trap. If I said yes, that would almost definitely have turned into a massive fight. There's just no world in which my wife would have been genuinely happy with me answering yes to that question. Second, and most importantly, I don't want that. I only want to have sex with my wife. That's where my desire is, and that's the relationship I'm committed to. But now here I am, second-guessing myself. Was there any other right answer to that question? To me, it feels like no. I honestly feel like I gave the only correct response possible under the circumstances. So, Reddit, was I right to see it as a trap question? Or do you think there was any other way I could have answered? Is my wife still in love with her ex? I need an outside perspective because I can't tell if my hunch is right or if I'm just overthinking things. My wife had a 6-year relationship before she and I met. For context, I also had a long relationship before her 8 years. So I understand what it's like to have a serious past relationship. That's not the problem. The issue is that when my wife and I first started dating, she would sometimes accidentally call me by her ex's name. Once, it even happened in front of my parents. I brought it up, and she promised me over and over that she doesn't want him and that I had nothing to worry about. So I decided to let it go. We got married, and a few months later, our dog got very sick. He needed 2 surgeries. During that time, my wife reached out to her ex to tell him all about it, keeping him updated on the dog's condition because they had gotten the dog together when they were still in a relationship. I found it really weird, but again, I brushed it off. Fast forward a few months, we hit some financial troubles and had to move back in with my in-laws while we got back on our feet. That's when my wife specifically asked me not to tell anyone because she didn't want her ex to find out. That one really bothered me. Now I can't help but wonder, are my instincts right? Is there more going on here than she's admitting? Or am I just overthinking things and making a problem where there isn't one? The Charlie Kirk stuff has flipped a switch in my head, and I'm scared to have children. I've never really considered myself a political person. By nature, I've always just believed in basic human rights, treating everyone equally, leading with kindness, and trying to live with empathy. My wife is from Mexico. She migrated here, and I love her to death. We've been talking about starting a family in the near future. Being with her has opened my eyes to just how privileged I've been as a white male. I always leaned more left politically, but I never really paid much attention to politics until recently. Then the Charlie Kirk stuff started, and it completely flipped a switch in my head. I even made a Facebook post about it, saying that while it's tragic what happened to him, we can't ignore the damage he caused to minorities and immigrants. That one post shocked my family. They actually reached out asking if I was okay, because it was not like me to speak up about things like that. It even started a fight. My family has always treated me well, but a lot of them lean heavily to the right, and some of my extended relatives are openly racist. That has always upset me, but I've stayed quiet because I'm anxious and avoid confrontation. Now, though, I can't ignore it anymore. I've started realizing how much privilege I've had my whole life. Through my marriage, I've also seen firsthand some of the difficulties my wife has had to face. On top of that, I have step-siblings from multiple nationalities, which has made me even more aware of how unfairly people are treated. The truth is, I'm scared for the future. When my wife and I have kids, probably in a year or two, I'm worried about the difficulties they'll face simply for being who they are. I'm terrified of sending them to school one day and having to wonder if they'll be safe from a shooting. And if we have a daughter, I know she'll face even more challenges. Just thinking about that makes me sad and incredibly anxious. I guess what I'm really trying to say is that, for the first time in my life, at 28 years old, I'm fully waking up to just how unequal and unsafe things are in this country. And honestly, it feels overwhelming. My daughter couldn't have us more. My best friend owns a lakefront property that's only a couple hours drive from my home. It's the kind of place that only recently got decent cell service, and people were genuinely excited when the only local grocery store, which closes at 6 p.m. and doesn't open on Sundays, finally started accepting credit cards instead of being cash only. Suffice it to say, it's not exactly easy to just run to a 24-hour corner store for necessities. Last year, there was a bit of an incident involving too much alcohol, a splitting axe, and poor judgment. So, this year, my friend decided to invest in a buttload, technically a cord of pre-chopped firewood. It sat at a safe distance from the fire pit all summer, and we worked our way through about 90% of it. The problem was that termites found the remaining 10%, and since the lake house is made of wood, that wasn't ideal. The solution? A bonfire. We made the most of it and turned it into a party. Friends brought sides, and there were multiple grills and even a smoker going. My job in the planning was simple: bring the supplies for s'mores. And not just a few, a lot of s'mores. When I was tasked with this, I made a point of asking everyone if they had any food allergies or dietary restrictions. Nobody said they had issues with gluten, so I bought the regular cheap graham crackers. The party kicked off in the afternoon, and everyone was having a fantastic time. Some people out on the lake were lured over by the smell of the food and asked if they could join, and of course, my friends said yes. There was plenty to go around. As the sun went down, we prepared to light the fire. The fun police, aka wives and girlfriends, ruined the chance for any spectacular explosions by insisting no lighter fluid or gasoline be used, just a regular grill lighter, some paper, and the termite dust. Not as exciting, but safe. Once the fire got going, I handed out wooden skewers and marshmallows to the kids so they could make s'mores. Adults were self-serve. I figured I didn't need to warn them not to stab each other with skewers. That's when an unfamiliar little girl and her mom came up in line. I gave the girl the same instructions I gave everyone else, but her mom asked, "Do you have gluten-free graham crackers?" I shook my head and apologized, explaining that when I asked beforehand, nobody had said they needed gluten-free. I added that the gluten-free kind is more expensive, so I hadn't bought them. I figured it wasn't the end of the world, just add more chocolate, and it's still a s'more if you squint. I thought that was the end of it. A little later, we all heard a child scream and splash in the water. It was dark, so everyone dropped what they were doing and rushed over. Turns out, a kid had tripped and face-planted off a dock into about a foot of water. He was scared, but fine, just needed a towel and dry clothes. When everyone came back to the fire, something was missing: all the graham crackers and chocolate. The marshmallows and skewers were still there, but the rest of the supplies were gone. I asked loudly if anyone knew what happened. That's when Gluten Mom piped up. My daughter couldn't have a s'more. That wasn't fair to her. I stared at her. "So, what did you do with the crackers and chocolate?" "I threw it in the fire," she said matter-of-factly. I hate when people deliberately exclude my daughter. Now you've learned your lesson. I was stunned. "You threw the food in the fire?" "Yup. Walmart has gluten-free. You can just go get some. They're not that expensive." For context, the nearest Walmart is a 45-minute drive, one way, and most of the adults had already had a few beers by then. Meanwhile, kids started returning to the fire, proudly holding marshmallows at various stages of char, excited for their last s'mores of the summer. They looked confused when they saw there were no crackers or chocolate. Parents grabbed new skewers and marshmallows, then realized something was missing. "Where'd the stuff go?" someone asked. I just pointed at Gluten Mom. This woman threw it all in the fire. Because I didn't bring gluten-free crackers. She did what? Who even is that? Turns out, nobody knew her, She had been one of the random people who showed up on a boat earlier. Kids started crying, parents looked disgusted, and the woman had the audacity to say, "What's the big deal? Walmarts are everywhere." One of the dads finally said, "You'd better go." Now, but she doubled down. "You made me do that. I didn't do anything wrong. You did when you excluded my daughter." The friend who had invited her finally wandered over. After hearing what happened, he didn't even look surprised, just tired. "I'm sorry, this is her first time up here." She didn't know. Gluten mom squawked, "No, we're going." And off she went. Everyone still had toasted marshmallows, but honestly, it was a gut punch. She managed to ruin what was supposed to be the last big hurrah of summer for everyone. Am I the asshole for letting my ex-stepdaughter keep a love nest? I, 48M, have known my stepdaughter, Lana, 18F, since she was 6 years old. I got together with her mom, my ex, 38F, back then, and for almost 10 years, I pretty much raised Lana as my own. Unfortunately, it turned out her mom had been cheating on me with her ex, 41M, the entire time. We divorced, and she got back together with him. By then, Lana was 16. Lana has never liked her biological dad. To put it bluntly, he only really cared about his sons, her older and younger brothers, 21M and 16M, and he's always been kind of a douche. Even when he would pick up the kids, Lana often chose to stay behind with her half-sister Jenny, 13F, my daughter with her mom, instead of going with her dad and brothers. When the split happened, Lana's mom moved back in with her bio dad, and immediately there was friction. He doesn't like anything about her personality or beliefs. He's extremely traditional when it comes to gender roles, and while his sons could date freely, Lana was absolutely forbidden from dating as long as she lived under his roof. Not long after Lana turned 18, one of these arguments exploded. She threw her things into bags and suitcases, stormed out, and had a friend pick her up. She couch surfed for a while before asking me if I could help her out. She wanted a stable place to live, and I was happy to help. I let her move into a small apartment in one of my rental properties that I had previously used as an Airbnb. She pays way under market rate, and honestly, I've let things slide for her that I would never let slide with any other tenant. Lana frequently has dates and friends over, and she comes and goes without any sort of curfew. To me, she's an adult, she works, she goes to community college, and she's entitled to live her own life. But somehow, my ex and her father still seem to keep tabs on her. Whenever she doesn't answer their calls, they blow up my phone to complain. The apartment is just a short walk from my house, and Jenny visits her all the time. Lana also comes over to my house regularly. It's worth mentioning that I have primary custody of Jenny, and she didn't want to move in with her mom and her partner either. Now here's the issue. My ex says it's weird and inappropriate for me to even maintain a relationship with Lana. She's furious that I'm letting her keep a love nest and helping her flout her real family's authority. But as far as I'm concerned, Lana is an adult. I promised her years ago I'd be there for her, and I'm not going to pull that away just because her mother is bitter or her bio dad wants to control her. She's 18, responsible, and making her own choices. So, am I the asshole for letting my ex-stepdaughter keep her apartment and continue living independently, even if it goes against her mom and dad's rules? My wife kissed another woman at a bachelorette party and says I'm overreacting. I'm a 35-year-old man, and I feel like my entire understanding of my marriage has been shaken. I've been married to my wife for 8 years, and we've been together for 12. Up until now, I would have described our relationship as solid, good, even. We've always had a foundation of trust, and whenever we've faced problems, we've been able to talk them through. That's why what happened feels so disorienting. 2 nights ago, my wife went to a bachelorette party for one of her closest friends. It was the usual scene, lots of drinking, dancing, and just being silly with her girlfriends. She came home late, which wasn't unusual, and everything seemed fine. The next morning, as we were having coffee, she was telling me all about the night. And then, almost as an afterthought, she casually mentioned that one of her female friends had made out with her. She laughed while she said it. She told the story like it was just another funny, harmless anecdote from a wild night, like spilling a drink or losing a heel. but I didn't laugh. I felt a cold wave of nausea. To me, a kiss is a kiss, and it's cheating. It doesn't matter that it was with another woman. It doesn't matter that they were both drunk. In my eyes, a line was crossed. A boundary in our marriage was violated. When I told her I was upset, she immediately brushed it off. She told me I was overreacting. Her defense was that she is straight, that they were both drunk, and that, in her words, these things just happen at bachelorettes. Then she essentially told me to just get over it. What hurts the most isn't even the kiss itself. It's the complete and total dismissal of my feelings. I felt like my concerns were being treated as invalid and ridiculous. Instead of trying to understand why I was hurt, she made me feel like I was crazy for even caring. She made me feel like my feelings were an inconvenience. Since that conversation, it's been stuck on a loop in my head. I can't stop replaying it. I want to be clear, I don't think she has romantic feelings for this friend. I don't believe she set out to intentionally betray me. But that intellectual understanding doesn't change the gut-wrenching feeling it caused. I feel like my definition of cheating is clear, and she just doesn't see it the same way. I don't know how we move forward from this if she won't even acknowledge that it hurt me. Maybe I am old-fashioned, but I still believe a kiss is a kiss. It's an intimate act, and it crossed a line. Her reaction, or lack thereof, has made me feel more alone than the act itself. My 38F husband, 38M, fractured his own skull by hitting himself in the head. I am terrified, confused, and sitting in a nightmare I never saw coming. Today, a minor disagreement with my husband ended with him in the emergency room after he hit himself in the head so hard he allegedly fractured his own skull. Our argument was about something as mundane as where to store the kids' bedding. I had a system I'd thought about that would help the kids be more independent with their laundry. He suggested an alternate idea, and I explained that I'd already tried his method and it hadn't worked. I tried to gently explain that the mental load of organizing our home has fallen entirely on me for years, and that my effort often goes unseen and unappreciated. I started to cry, feeling completely invisible and drained. Instead of comfort, his response was to point out some past organizational attempt of mine that had failed years ago. It felt like a criticism, not an acknowledgement. When I told him that his comment hurt me and didn't make me feel appreciated, he became increasingly frustrated. I went to our bedroom to cry in private, and that's when I heard him screaming. At one point, he screamed, "I fractured my F*******ing skull." He came into the room, but I left to continue cleaning, trying to de-escalate. He followed me, insisting he wasn't being dismissive and that his failed example was proof he did pay attention to my efforts. Then it escalated into something I've never seen before. He started screaming, crying, pulling his own hair, and falling to the ground. He began banging his head on the floor, yelling that I was supposed to be the one person in the world who understood him. I was absolutely terrified. I backed away, grabbed my 16-year-old daughter, and we got out of the house. Once we were safe, I told him to call his brother or an ambulance. He took an Uber to the hospital and is there now. This isn't a complete shock, given our history. Our relationship has been rocky. I'm a giver and a leader. He has been passive and content to let me carry everything. I left my children's birth father due to domestic violence, and my current husband stepped in to help raise them from a young age. For years, I burned myself out being the sole breadwinner, handling all the kids' needs, and cleaning the house while he played video games. After 4 years, he finally acknowledged it was a problem. He started therapy and was diagnosed with a mood regulation disorder, stemming from how his father treated him as a child. His triggers are feeling dismissed or called a failure, and he can twist the most mundane situations into a personal attack. But then he stopped going to therapy, and I felt my hope for us drain away. Now, I'm faced with an impossible choice. My instinct is to leave. This behavior is dangerous, volatile, and cannot be around my children. But my 14-year-old son is mentally unwell due to past abuse from his birth father. He has told me that my husband is the only male stability he has ever known, and that if I divorced him, he would never be okay and never forgive me. I feel like I already failed my kids once by not protecting them enough from their birth father. The guilt is crushing. I am paralyzed by the fear that no matter what I do, it will be the wrong choice and cause more damage. Update. Thank you for all the comments and support. There is more context to this situation. First, an important update from the hospital. My husband does not have a skull fracture or any head injury. I spoke to him on the phone. He is staying elsewhere tonight and has taken time off work to seek mental health treatment. However, he explained the incident as an autistic meltdown and said I need to have more empathy for him. For context, we are both autistic. My response was firm. I told him I didn't care about the label and to stay away. Many have asked why I stayed this long. The reality is grim. I have no family nearby. My friends are states away or unable to help. I cannot afford our home on my own, and I cannot get my kids to their essential therapy appointments without his help and vehicle. Until now, the trade-off seemed to be enduring a frustrating, unequal marriage to provide stability for my children. This was only the second violent outburst of this kind, and the first did not involve self-harm. But after today, the calculus has changed. The cost of that stability has become too high. Ada for not taking my wife's side against her ex about the kids? I'm a 40-year-old man, married to my 35-year-old wife. She has 2 sons from a previous marriage, ages 13 and 11. I need an outside perspective because I feel like I'm living in a crossfire and the casualties are the kids. My wife has a very high conflict relationship with her ex-husband. He cheated on her, which is why their marriage ended, and understandably, she holds a lot of anger and resentment toward him. I get that. I would too. However, here's the crucial part. Her ex is a good, attentive father. My stepsons absolutely adore him. He goes to all their sports games, takes them fishing, and is actively involved in their lives. Their custody arrangement is substantial. He has them every week from Thursday night through Monday morning. The problem is my wife's behavior. She constantly creates issues and conflict where there doesn't need to be any. If the boys mention their dad's new wife in a positive light, my wife will immediately call her a homewrecker and tell the boys they should ignore her. If their dad asks for an extra day with them for a special occasion, her response is a firm, angry no. If he needs their medical information for something, she refuses to share it and tells him to call the doctor himself. Lately, I've noticed a change in the boys. They've become quiet and withdrawn around us. They seem genuinely depressed. The breaking point for me was when my 17-year-old daughter told me something heartbreaking. The oldest stepson asked her, "Does your mom hate my dad?" He then seemed genuinely sad when my daughter said that you and I get along just fine. It was like he was wishing for that same peace in his own life. I knew I had to say something. I sat my wife down and told her that this behavior has to stop. I explained that her constant anger and negativity aren't hurting her ex. They're hurting her own sons. It's damaging their emotional well-being, and it's actively harming her relationship with them. Her response? She hasn't spoken to me for 2 days. The silent treatment. So, I have to ask, am I the asshole here? Am I wrong for not blindly supporting my wife in a conflict that is clearly causing pain to the children we're supposed to be protecting? ATA for holding a grudge that I was uninvited to my boyfriend's mother's funeral? I, F35, have been with my boyfriend, M42, for 5 years. We're from the same country but met overseas, and we live together now. For the first 4 years of our relationship, I never met his parents. He always had excuses, distance, bad timing, and the fact that his mother had dementia. He said it would be too hard on her to meet new people. By the time I finally did meet her, her dementia had progressed badly, and she disliked me immediately. That devastated me because I felt like I'd been kept away for too long to ever have a real chance to form a bond with her. To be honest, my partner can be difficult. He values privacy over connection and often puts up emotional roadblocks when things get personal. Last month, his mother passed away. Naturally, I assumed I'd attend the funeral to support him. He flew back earlier to see her, and I booked my flight after. The day before the funeral, I asked for details, and he said, "Maybe it's best you don't go." He explained that I barely knew his father, hadn't met his extended family, and that it wasn't the right setting. I told him I wanted to support him, not anyone else. He went back and forth all day before finally telling me, late at night, not to come. He said he preferred to deal with things alone. I was devastated. On the day of the funeral, I sent him a kind message of support. He thanked me, but I didn't hear from him again until the evening. The next day, he said, "I made the right choice not having you there. It would have been too stressful." He even told me he'd spoken to friends and family who agreed with him. Finding out that his friends were there broke me even more. It's been 3 weeks, and I can't shake it. I already feel like I'm low on his list, below his friends, his family, even his nights out. Being excluded from one of the hardest days of his life feels like confirmation of that. For clarity, I've never suspected cheating. A week later, I did spend a few days with his dad and met some of his friends, so I don't think he was hiding me. He's never shown interest in female attention and prefers the company of his male friends. But still, part of me feels deeply rejected. Another part of me wonders if I'm being selfish, since grief can make people act differently. Should I just be compassionate and let this go? Or am I justified in feeling pushed out and hurt? ATA for telling my roommate she needs to shower more often because the smell is affecting the whole apartment. I, 22F, share a 2-bedroom apartment with my roommate, 23F. We've known each other since freshman year of college, and honestly, she's fun to live with most of the time. We usually get along really well. The problem is, she barely showers. Sometimes she'll go 4 or 5 days without bathing, and lately it's started to get really bad. At first, I didn't want to say anything because hygiene can be such a personal subject. I didn't want to come across as judgmental or rude, and I figured maybe she'd fix it on her own. But instead, it just got worse. Her room has a constant musty smell. Her bed sheets clearly haven't been washed in a long time, and when she sits on the couch, the cushions actually hold onto the odor for hours. The smell has started to spread through the entire apartment, and now it's impossible to ignore. It's even gotten to the point where other people are noticing. A couple of weeks ago, I invited some girlfriends over for wine night. Later that evening, one of them texted me privately asking what was going on with my roommate, because she noticed the smell right away. I was mortified. So a few days ago, I finally decided to say something. I tried to be gentle and careful with my words. I told her that maybe she should shower a little more often, because the smell is starting to spread through the apartment and it's hard to cover up. I didn't yell or insult her, I just tried to be honest. She immediately got defensive. She snapped at me that I was being controlling, acting like her mom, and overstepping. Then she said if it bothers me so much, I should just open a window or light candles. Since then, things have been tense. She's barely speaking to me and acts cold whenever we're both home. To make it worse, one of our mutual friends told me I was in the wrong for bringing it up at all. According to them, everyone has their own lifestyle, and I should just deal with it instead of criticizing. But I feel like this isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's affecting the shared space we both live in, and it's honestly embarrassing when guests notice. So, ATA for telling my roommate she needs to shower more often because the smell is taking over the whole apartment. ATA for not wanting to go to the grocery store and basically being told I'm just a roommate to my boyfriend. I, 28F, recently moved in with my boyfriend, 30M, into his home. I still own my place and am currently fixing it up to rent out, so I've been splitting my time between moving things, preparing it for tenants, and trying to settle into his place. For context, I moved most of my stuff over largely by myself with very little help, and I'm still handling the rental situation on top of work. When I first moved in, my boyfriend told me not to worry about contributing to bills until I got a tenant. I offered to help anyway, but he insisted it wasn't necessary. Despite that, I've still been covering about 95% of the groceries, the entire electric bill, and a good portion of our restaurant outings. On top of that, I'm the one who consistently cooks for both of us. So, here's what happened. It was Sunday morning, day 3 of my period. The day before, we had already cleaned the house, and on Friday, we had made a grocery run for a few things. The freezer is jam-packed, and the fridge is fairly full. I also had things to do that day, including finishing notes for work, doing laundry, and even making sourdough bread, which he specifically asked me to make. 20 seconds, literally, after I woke up, my boyfriend asked me to go to the grocery store with him. The problem is, when we do grocery runs, they aren't quick. They usually turn into 3 to 4 hour trips across multiple stores, BJ's, Aldi, and Big Y, since we shop based on prices and availability. I just wasn't up for it, physically or mentally. I told him I didn't know what we needed right now, and I'd prefer not to do a massive run that day. I did mention I was planning to stop by one store later to grab a couple of specific ingredients we needed, but I didn't want to spend hours hopping between stores. Instead of understanding, he immediately took it as me refusing to buy groceries financially. He pointed out that I had recently spent a significant amount of money on myself, buying some new and expensive pots and pans. For context, his house used to be his grandmother's, and many of the pans were decades old and honestly kind of gross. I bought the new ones to replace them and to make cooking better for both of us. But he twisted it into, "You'll spend on yourself, but won't help me out with groceries." He got mad, brought up that he covers all the bills, again, something he told me not to worry about for now, and then told me that I felt more like a roommate than a girlfriend because I didn't care about him. After that, he left the house without saying "I love you," and now he's ignoring my calls. I was honestly stunned. I know I can be cranky on my period, but damn. It feels like he completely disregarded the fact that I've been pulling more than my weight already with groceries, cooking, and even utilities. And this whole blow-up happened because I didn't want to spend half the day going on a giant shopping trip right after waking up. So now I'm left wondering, did I overreact by refusing to go? Or is he the one being unfair by suddenly treating me like I'm just a roommate? ATA for defending my son after he hit his teacher? I need to know if I'm the one in the wrong here. The title sounds bad, I know, but the full story is so much more complicated. Earlier this week, my wife and I received an urgent call to come to our son's school immediately. We were told our 15-year-old son, Adam, had hit his math teacher. We were completely shocked. We've never had a single behavioral problem with him. In fact, we've always been praised by the school for how well he's doing, how many friends he has, and what a calm, nice kid he is. This news came completely out of left field. The moment we arrived at the school, the atmosphere felt strange, even hostile. As soon as we saw Adam and tried to go talk to him, another teacher pulled us aside and immediately herded us into the principal's office. We weren't allowed to exchange a single word with our own son. Then, they launched right into it. They started telling us about his immediate suspension, that the math teacher was in the nurse's office, and that it was unclear what other consequences would follow. It was all accusations and punishments with zero context. No one would tell us what happened. So, I started asking questions. What happened? Why did he do it? What was the sequence of events? The answers were still vague and unhelpful. It happened during class. He hit the teacher. There was blood. They were actively avoiding telling us what started the whole incident. So, I put my foot down. I told them I wanted to see the recording of the entire incident. All classes are monitored by cameras, and I demanded to speak to my son. I said that without these two things, I would not be signing any paperwork or agreeing to anything. That's when things got even weirder. The principal and the teacher acted like they hadn't expected us to ask questions. They basically tried to tell me I had no right to leave the office or talk to my son without first signing the suspension agreement. It was a load of nonsense. My wife asked me to calm down, but I kept pressing. Finally, they relented and told us the whole story. Here's what actually happened. My son was looking out the window during class, not concentrating on the lesson. So, the teacher decided the appropriate response was to sneak up behind him and deliberately scare him. Well, it worked. He was so startled that he screamed and, in a pure, involuntary reflex, his arm flew out and he punched her in the face. There was no argument beforehand. No fight. No anger. It was a startled reaction to being intentionally frightened. I immediately said that my son should, of course, apologize for hitting her. But I also said that if they moved forward with suspending him for what was clearly a reflexive action provoked by the teacher, I would make sure the school faced consequences for their role in this. The principal tried one more time to stop me from seeing my son, so I started asking her what specific law gave her the right to prevent a parent from speaking to their child and whether the school was comfortable with holding information from a parent. She finally gave up and let us go, but not before muttering that we still don't know what consequences the teacher will face. It's Friday now, and nothing has happened so far. But the teacher hasn't been back to school since the incident. I think I did the right thing by defending my son and demanding the full story. I'm ready to keep fighting this if I have to. But my wife, surprisingly, thinks we should have just signed the papers for the 3-week suspension because it would have been easier. In her opinion, I made a bigger problem out of it and I misread the situation. So, am I the asshole for defending my son? My 25F boyfriend 26M says he doesn't want me to be the only girl he has sex with. How'd I come to terms with this? My boyfriend 26M and I 25F have been together for almost 2 years. Before me, he only dated men. He struggles a lot with anxiety, and something he often brings up is his fear of missing out, FOMO. One of the things he feels like he's missing out on is sexual experiences with other women. We are in a monogamous relationship, and we've discussed it multiple times. He's made it clear that he doesn't want an open relationship. He admits he couldn't handle me being with someone else, but the thought of not being with more women still causes him distress. In the beginning, I would get extremely upset whenever he brought this up. It made me feel insecure, unwanted, or like I wasn't enough. More recently, I've been trying to take a step back and look at it differently. I realized that a lot of people apparently feel this way. For example, one of my female friends told me something similar about her boyfriend. She loves him, but sometimes she feels like she wishes she had experienced more. So, I understand now that these thoughts aren't rare. But for me, personally, I don't feel that way at all. I don't have the same desire to be with anyone else. That makes it really hard for me to relate to him, and it leaves me wondering, how do I come to terms with it? I don't want him to feel like he's trapped or living in a cage, but the thought of him with another woman devastates me. It makes me cry just imagining it. I know I couldn't handle an open relationship because I'm very monogamous. At the same time, I also don't want to dismiss his feelings or make him feel like he can't be honest with me. Sometimes I even catch myself thinking, should I just let him hit it with someone if the opportunity comes up? But I already know that would break my heart. It would feel like a betrayal, even if it was something we agreed on. To make it worse, I struggle with insecurities. I worry maybe I'm not enough for him, or not his type. I'm skinny, and he does compliment me a lot, but he's also said he loves chubby women. That feeds into my fear that he secretly wishes I looked different, and that's why he wants to sleep with other women. I love him deeply. I don't want to lose him. But I feel confused, stuck, and honestly devastated by this. Is there a healthy way forward without me giving up my boundaries and without him feeling trapped? Or are we fundamentally mismatched in our needs? TLDR, my boyfriend has FOMO about not having more sexual experiences with women, even though he doesn't want an open relationship. I'm very monogamous, and the idea of him with another woman breaks me. I don't know how to deal with this. I want to understand him, but I'm scared it means I'm not enough for him. Friend's husband made a scene at a restaurant, and I don't wish to see him again. This might sound harsh or unforgiving, but after my last outing with a friend and her husband, I have decided I don't want to see him again. A few weeks ago, my husband and I met them for lunch. It wasn't the first time. We've had meals with them a handful of times over the past few years, but it was definitely the last. Every single time, it has felt more like punishment than pleasure. Her husband has no manners and makes the entire experience stressful. He has always been rude to staff, but what happened this last time sealed the deal. He ordered something, was charged for it, as expected, and then caused a huge scene arguing with the staff. I even offered to pay just to calm things down, but my friend brushed it off and said, well, he already talked to the manager. The thing is, he came in aggressive from the start, insisting on speaking to a manager immediately because our table wasn't served the instant we sat down. It was embarrassing, uncomfortable, and completely unnecessary. Afterwards, I even emailed the restaurant to apologize for his behavior because I felt so bad. That's how uncomfortable he made the situation. Here's the problem. I love my friend. I genuinely enjoy spending time with her, but I can't keep wasting my limited free time dealing with her husband. I'm a working mom. My schedule is packed, and honestly, I'd rather scrub my toilet than sit through another meal with him. Ideally, I'd like to hang out with my friend one-on-one, but that's easier said than done. She needs to ask her husband for permission to go anywhere, even when he's working. And when she does ask, it can take up to 3 weeks to get an answer. Then, once she finally confirms, it's usually the day before. I can't hold time in my calendar indefinitely like that. It's just not realistic with work, kids, and other commitments. I feel stuck. I don't want to lie or make excuses forever, but I also don't want to lose my friend completely. At the same time, I know I cannot do another double date with her husband. So what do I do the next time she asks us to go out as couples? If I'm honest about not wanting to see him again, I worry she'll cut me off entirely. But if I keep going along with it, I'm sacrificing time, energy, and sanity just to appease someone who makes everything miserable. I also feel guilty because I think I might be her only friend. That makes it even harder. TLDR, friend's husband is rude, aggressive, and made a huge scene at a restaurant. I don't want to see him again, but my friend always includes him in outings and needs his permission to see me alone. I don't want to lose her, but I can't keep dealing with him either. What should I do when she asks for another double date? Update: best man wants to bring his baby to my child-free wedding. Hi all. Before I dive in, I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented respectfully, offered perspective, and validated my frustrations. You're wonderful, and I really appreciate it. Red heart. To those who tried to vilify me or my fiancé for the choices we made for our wedding, please remember you can disagree without being mean. I did come here asking for advice, but being cruel under the safety of anonymity is a bit much. The update. After posting, I had an in-depth discussion with my fiancé. When I first brought it up, he was pretty distraught and unsure what to do. His instinct was to just give in and let Jane bring the baby so Brad, his best man, wouldn't be upset. I explained why I felt strongly about sticking to our child-free rule, both for fairness and for the sake of boundaries. But I also told him that if he really wanted to say yes, he could, since Brad is his best man. He didn't like that we were at odds, and said it didn't feel like a fair compromise. So I suggested he call his brother, Bob, for advice. Context on Bob. He's also one of my fiancé's groomsmen. He got married 2 years ago, also had a child-free wedding. Brad was one of his groomsmen too, and he had similar issues with Brad back then. Lack of involvement, poor communication, not keeping promises. Bob himself has a 6-month-old baby, but is respecting our child-free request and arranging childcare. Bob's advice. Bob gave him the same hard no that many of you did. Making an exception for Jane would cause drama, since other parents weren't allowed to bring their babies. It was rude for Jane to ask so last minute. Brad likely would leave early regardless. It would just depend on whether he left alone or with Jane. It was tough for my fiancé to hear, but it clicked. I overheard Bob ask what I thought, and my fiancé admitted that I felt the same way as Bob. Afterward, my fiancé apologized to me for being defensive earlier. He realized he was just disappointed in Brad's lack of involvement and thought saying yes would keep Brad around longer. He even admitted he wanted to replace Brad with Bob as best man, but didn't want to nuke the friendship entirely. I encouraged him to talk openly with Brad, and he said he'd try. The outcome. We told Jane that, given the timing and the clear rule we'd set from the start, she could not bring the baby. But we also said we'd love to see her and the baby after the wedding, and reminded her that the rehearsal dinner is family-friendly and kids are welcome. She replied that she understood, but would have to rescind her RSVP. She said she'd love to see us after the wedding, but made no comment on the rehearsal dinner invite. As for Brad, my fiancé reached out to set up a beer to talk serious best man things. Brad canceled on him this morning with no reschedule. My fiancé was frustrated, but honestly, it's in line with Brad's usual behavior. Final thoughts. We're sticking to our boundaries. Jane won't be bringing the baby. Brad will, hopefully, still show up, and if he leaves early, that's on him. Thank you again to everyone who helped me work through this. Sometimes you need an outside voice. In this case, Bob's advice carried a lot of weight because he's been through it himself. My fiancé did apologize afterward, so please don't hate on him for needing his brother's perspective to really solidify things. TLDR, we told Jane no baby at the wedding. She rescinded her RSVP. My fiancé's brother gave him the tough advice he needed to hear, and he realized Brad's lack of involvement isn't something we can fix by bending the rules. We're moving forward with our boundaries intact. My husband refused to get out of the car at a restaurant. I am so pissed at my husband right now. We went grocery shopping this morning, and he complained bitterly 5 separate times. On the way back home, he offered to take us out to breakfast. He wanted to go to the diner where they put mushrooms in the chili. The rest of the food is pretty meh. Then he realized that by the time we got there it would be 11 o'clock and they'd be serving lunch. I suggested going to another diner, the one that makes everything from scratch and is amazing. He didn't want it because they only give him 1 sausage patty. I suggested he just order a second one. We pulled up and it's 11 o'clock. I reminded him that I needed to use the bathroom. I had told him this about 10 miles earlier. He got out of the car, looked at the lunch specials, and then got back in. He wanted me to go in and ask if they were still serving breakfast. I told him he should get out and ask. He refused and also said I shouldn't use the bathroom unless we ate there. So I got back in the car and drove home, past the other diner he wanted to go to. He likes that one, but I hate it because they won't even attempt to make a decent hollandaise sauce. Instead, they serve eggs Benedict with a cheese sauce that's always curdled. We got home, I used the bathroom, and then I refused to go anywhere with him. I told him he's too high maintenance. He disagreed, so I listed everything he had bitched about. He still insisted he did nothing wrong. Then he asked if I wanted to go with him to the Amish stand to buy produce. I told him no, that it's not fun because he insists I drive, then he won't get out of the car, and just bitches that I didn't get what he wanted. I am not in the mood for that bullshit today. Now he's upset because I don't want to go anywhere tonight, and he's blaming me. He said he was going to take me out on the boat. But of course, it's somehow my fault that we're not going, because I refuse to go anywhere with him today. It's always my fault. He always makes it my fault that he won't take me out on the boat, to the point where I expect the excuse. It's a carrot he dangles in front of me and never delivers. I miss my ex-husband. Hello, I, 27F, have been single for almost 3 years because of him, 28M. We were high school sweethearts and had been together for 8.5 years since we were 16. We went through so much together, and most of the time, we came out on top. We had a son and even bought a house together. But 4 months after our son's birth, he started acting distant and strange with me. I later found out that he had developed feelings for his coworker, 35F, and no longer loved me. We separated. At first, he wanted things to stay normal and for me to still live with him, but the pain was too much. I ended up getting my own place. We had an uncontested divorce, and just a few months later, they got married. Honestly, I think it was because she was already pregnant. Knowing that hurts so much. Seeing them happy together is painful, especially because we have split custody of our son. He acts strangely around me. He doesn't look me in the eye and mumbles when he talks. The only time he really says more is when he's under the influence of something, and then he'll bring up the past. Right after they got married, he followed me on social media and started talking to me every day. Then, out of nowhere, he blocked me on everything and told me his love for her wouldn't change. I spent about 1/3 of my life with him, and even though things ended badly, I still love him. I don't want to go into too many details about our life, just in case he or someone we know comes across this. But the truth is, I can't move on because of him. Some days, I catch myself thinking he'll come back to me. I miss him so much. Ada for telling my husband's family something my SL said when she was upset at me. My husband's brother, BIL, and his wife, SL, have 2 children, both boys. My husband and I have 1 son, and I'm currently pregnant with a daughter. Long story short, my SL has been upset about the fact that I'm having a girl, since she'll be the first granddaughter in the family. She decided to lash out at me over it, and later, when we sat down to try and fix our relationship, she told me something that really stuck with me. She said she felt like she couldn't celebrate our daughter because she didn't want my child being celebrated more than her own children. Then, she went on to say that she felt like her kids were treated like second-class citizens. My husband and I immediately asked if she felt we treated her children that way. She hesitated, but eventually said no. We asked if she could give us an example of when her kids were treated poorly, and she just said everyone treated them that way. We were shocked, because we had no idea she felt like this. A week later, I brought it up to my ML, who watches both of our kids a couple of days a week. She was devastated to hear it. She had no idea and was really upset, because she wanted to figure out who exactly was supposedly treating her grandchildren differently. The next week, I also mentioned it to my husband's other 3 brothers. They all said they didn't think her kids were treated any differently than anyone else's. In fact, one brother told me that she had been making comments behind my back about me having a girl, but he didn't bring it up sooner because he didn't fully understand what she was trying to say. 2 weeks later, she found out I had told the family. Instead of explaining further or giving examples, she went off on me for sharing what she had said in a private conversation. To this day, she still hasn't given any details, and now I'm starting to wonder if she just made it all up. So, Ada for telling my husband's family what she said, or was it okay since I was only trying to figure out what really happened? Should I tell my best friend and her husband that his friend tried to come into my room on their wedding night? Hello everyone! I just got home from a destination wedding, and I find myself in quite a dilemma. My best friend just got married to her now husband. The ceremony was beautiful, the dinner was lovely, and the party afterward was amazing. At the dinner, I was seated next to one of the groom's friends. At first, he seemed like a nice, normal guy. Since I was the maid of honor, he asked me a lot of questions about myself and about the bride. Looking back, I think he may have been trying to get close to me, but honestly, I ended up avoiding him after a while. When the party finally wrapped up around 2 a.m., I helped the couple pack up their gifts before heading to my own room. I was one of the lucky ones who got a solo room, so I was looking forward to a little peace and quiet. At about 2:30 a.m., I was removing my makeup when I suddenly heard a knock at the door. I figured it might be the bride or groom, so without hesitation, I opened it. After all, the only people staying at this small hotel were friends and family, so I didn't feel uneasy about opening the door that late. But standing there was the groom's friend. He asked if he could sleep in my bed. I was completely shocked. I asked him why, and he said he couldn't sleep in his own room. I asked again why that was, but he refused to answer. Instead, he told me that he wouldn't try anything with me. And that's when my gut dropped, because why would you need to say that if you had pure intentions? I told him no and immediately shut the door in his face. The next morning, at breakfast, I was forced to sit next to him since all the other seats were taken. He didn't say a single word to me, which honestly was a relief. I chose not to say anything right away because I didn't want to ruin my best friend's wedding night or her first morning as a newlywed. But now I can't stop thinking about it. Should I tell the couple what happened? Should I wait until after their honeymoon? Or should I just never bring it up at all? On one hand, I know my best friend would be disgusted if she knew what her husband's friend did. On the other hand, there's not much she could do about it. He's still her husband's friend. As for the groom, I can imagine 2 possible reactions. Either he'd laugh it off and say, "He just likes you," or he'd get extremely mad and feel completely disrespected. There's a good chance I may never see this man again, but I still feel so angry and disgusted that he thought he could get away with this. I don't know if I can keep this secret from my best friend. I'm an English teacher in Thailand. The teacher I replaced left a disturbing diary. I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. I'm an ESL teacher, which basically means I teach English as a second language. I'm currently writing this from Phuket City, Thailand, my new place of work. But I'm not here to talk about my life. I'm actually here to talk about the teacher I was hired to replace. This teacher's name is Sarah, a fellow American like myself, and rather oddly, Sarah packed up her things one day and left Thailand without even notifying the school. From what my new colleagues have told me, this was very out of character for her. According to them, Sarah was a kind, gentle, and very responsible young woman. So, you can imagine everyone's surprise when she was no longer showing up for work. I was hired not long after Sarah was confirmed to be out of the country. They even gave me her old accommodation. Well, once I was finally settled in and began to unpack the last of my stuff, I then unexpectedly found something. What I found, placed intentionally between the space of the bed and bedside drawer, was a diary. As you can probably guess, this diary belonged to Sarah. I just assumed she forgot to bring the diary with her when she left. Well, I'm not proud to admit this, but I read what was inside. I thought there may be something in there that suggested why Sarah just packed up and left. But what I instead found was that all the pages had been torn out, all but 5. And what was written in these handful of pages, in her own words, is the exact reason why I'm sharing this. What was written was an allegedly terrifying experience within the jungles of central Vietnam. After I read and reread the pages in this diary, I then asked Sarah's former colleagues if she had ever mentioned anything about Vietnam, if she had ever worked there as an English teacher, or even if she'd just been there for travel. Without mentioning the contents of Sarah's diary to them, her colleagues did admit she had not only been to Vietnam in recent years, but had previously taught English as a second language there. Although I now had confirmation Sarah had in fact been to Vietnam, this only left me with more questions than answers. If what Sarah wrote in this diary of hers was true, why had she not told anyone about it? If Sarah wasn't going around telling people about her traumatic experience, then why on earth did she leave her diary behind? And why are there only 5 pages left? What other parts of Sarah's story were in here? Well, that's why I'm sharing this now, because it is my belief that Sarah wanted some part of her story to be found and shared with the world. So, without any further ado, here is Sarah's story in her exact words. Don't worry, I'll be back afterwards to give some of my thoughts. May 30th, 2018. That night, I again bunked with Haley, while Brody had to make do with Tyler. Despite how exhausted I was, I knew I just wouldn't be able to get to sleep. Staring up through the sheer darkness of Haley's tent ceiling, all I saw was the lifeless body of Chris, lying face down with stretched horizontal arms. I couldn't help but worry for Sophie and the others, and all I could do was hope they were safe and would eventually find their way out of the jungle. Lying awake that night, replaying and overthinking my recent life choices, I was suddenly pulled back to reality by an outside presence. On the other side of that thin, polyester wall, I could see, as clear as day through the darkness, a bright and fluorescent glow, accompanied by a polyphonic rhythm of footsteps. Believing that it may have been Sophie and the others, I sit up in my sleeping bag, just hoping to hear the familiar voices. But as the light expanded, turning from a distant glow into a warm and overwhelming presence, I quickly realized the expanding bright colors that seemed to absorb the surrounding darkness were not coming from flashlights. Letting go of the possibility that this really was our friends out here, I cocooned myself inside my sleeping bag, trying to make myself as small as possible, as I heard the footsteps and snapping twigs come directly outside of the polyester walls. I close my eyes, but the glow is still able to force its way into my sight. The footsteps seemed so plentiful, almost encircling the tent, and all I could do was repeat in my head the only comforting words I could find. Thus we may see that the Lord is merciful unto all who will, in the sincerity of their hearts, call upon his name. As I say a silent prayer to myself, this being the first prayer I did for more than a year, I suddenly feel engulfed by something all around me. Coming out of my cocoon, I push up with my hands to realize that the walls of the tent have collapsed onto us. Feeling like I can't breathe, I start to panic under the sheet of polyester, just trying to find any space that had air. But then I suddenly hear Haley screaming. She sounded terrified. Trying to find my way to her, Haley cries out for help, as though someone was attacking her. Through the sheet of darkness, I follow towards her screams, before the warm light comes over me like a veil, and I feel a heavy weight come on top of me, forcing me to stay where I was. I try and fight my way out of whatever it was that was happening to me, before I feel a pair of arms wrap around my waist, lifting, forcing me up from the ground. I was helpless. I couldn't see or even move, and whoever or whatever it was that had trapped me held me firmly in place, as the sheet of polyester in front of me was firmly ripped open. Now feeling myself being dragged out of the collapsed tent, I shut my eyes out of fear, before my hands and arms are ripped away from my body and I'm forcefully yanked onto the ground. Finally opening my eyes, I stare up from the ground, and what I see is an array of burning fire, and standing underneath that fire, holding it, like halos above their heads, I see more than a dozen terrifying, distorted faces. I cannot tell you what I saw next, because for this part, I was blindfolded, as were Haley, Brody, and Tyler. Dragged from our flattened tents, the fear on their faces was the last thing I saw, before a veil of darkness returned over me. We were made to walk, forcibly through the jungle and vegetation. We were made to walk for a long time. Where to? I didn't know, because I was too afraid to even stop and think about where it was they were taking us. But it must have taken us all night, because when we are finally stopped, forced to the ground and our blindfolds taken off, the dim morning light appeared around us, as did our captors. Standing over us, Tyler, Brody, Haley, Aaron, and the others. They were here too. Our terrified eyes met as soon as the blindfolds were taken off, and when we finally turned away to see who, or what it was that had taken us, we see a dozen or more human beings. Some of them were holding torches, while others held spears, with arms protruding underneath a thick fur of vegetative camouflage, and they all varied in size. Some of them were tall, but others were extremely small, no taller than the children from my own classroom. It didn't even matter what their height was, because their bare arms were the only human thing I could see. Whoever these people were, they hid their faces underneath a variety of hideous, wooden masks. No one of them was the same. Some of them appeared human, while others were far more monstrous, demonic, animalistic tribal masks. Aaron was right. The stories were real. Swarming around us, we then hear a commotion directly behind our backs. Turning our heads around, we see that a pair of tribespeople were tearing up the forest floor with extreme, almost superhuman ease. It was only after did we realize that what they were doing wasn't tearing up the ground in a destructive act, but they were exposing something. Something already there. What they were exposing from the ground, between the root legs of a tree, heaving from its womb. Branches, bush, and clumps of soil, as though bringing newborn life into this world, was a very dark and cavernous hole. It was the entryway of a tunnel. The larger of the tribespeople come directly over us. Now looking down at us, one of them raises his hands by each side of his horned mask, the mask of the devil. Grasping in his hands the carved wooden face, the tribesman pulls the mask away to reveal what is hidden underneath, and what I see is not what I expected. What I see is a middle-aged man with dark hair and a dark beard, but he didn't look Vietnamese. He barely even looked Asian. It was as if whoever this man was a mixed race of Asian and something else. Following by example, that's when the rest of the tribespeople removed their masks, exposing what was underneath, and what we saw from the other men and women were similar characteristics, all with dark or even brown hair, but not entirely Vietnamese. Then we noticed the smaller ones. They were children, no older than 10 or 12 years old. But what was different about them was, not only did they not look Vietnamese, they didn't even look Asian. They looked Caucasian. The children appeared to almost be white. These were not tribespeople. They were. We didn't know. The man, the first of them to reveal his identity to us, he walks past us to stand directly over the hole under the tree, looking round the forest to his people, as though silently communicating through eye contact alone. The unmasked people bring us over to him, one by one. Placed in a singular line directly in front of the hole, the man, now wearing a mask of authority on his own face, stares daggers at us, and he says to us, in plain English words, "Crawl, crawl." As soon as he shouts these familiar words to us, the ones who we mistook for tribespeople, camouflaged to blend into the jungle, force each of us forward, guiding us into the darkness of the hole. Tyler was the first to go through, followed by Steve, Miles, and then Brody. Aaron was directly after, but he refused to go through out of fear. Tears in his voice, Aaron told them he couldn't go through, that he couldn't fit, before one of the children brutally clubs his back with the blunt end of a spear. Once Aaron was through, Haley, Sophie, and myself came after. I could hear them both crying behind me, terrified beyond imagination. I was afraid too, but not because I knew we were being abducted. The thought of that had slipped my mind. I was afraid because it was now my turn to enter through the hole, the dark, narrow entrance of the tunnel, and not only was I afraid of the dark, but I was also extremely claustrophobic. Entering into the depths of the tunnel, a veil of darkness returned over me. It was so dark and I could not see a single thing. Not whoever was in front of me, not even my own hands and arms as I crawled further along. But I could hear everything and everyone. I could hear Tyler, Aaron, and the rest of them, panicking, hyperventilating, having no idea where it was they were even crawling to, or for how long. I could hear Haley and Sophie screaming behind me, calling out the Lord's name. It felt like we'd been down there for an eternity, an endless continuation of hell that we could not escape. We crawled continually through the darkness and winding bends of tunnel for half an hour before my hands and knees were already in agony. It was only earth beneath us, but I could not help but feel like I was crawling over an eternal sea of pebbles that, with every yard made, turned more and more into a sea of shard glass. But that was not the worst of it, because we weren't the only creatures down there. I knew there would be insects down here. I could already feel them scurrying across my fingers, making their way through the locks of my hair or tunneling underneath my clothing. But then I felt something much bigger. Brushing my hands with the wetness of their fur, or climbing over the backs of my legs with the patter of tiny little feet, was the absolute worst of my fears. There were rodents down here. Not knowing what rodents they were exactly, but having a very good guess, I then feel the occasional slither of some naked, worm-like tail. Or at least, that's what I told myself, because if they weren't tails, that only meant it was something much more dangerous and could potentially kill me. Thankfully, further through the tunnel, almost acting as a midway point, the hard soil beneath me had given way, and what I now crawled, or should I say sludged through, was less than a foot-deep layer of mud water. Although this shallow sewer of water was extremely difficult to maneuver through, where I felt myself sink further into the earth with every progression, and came with a range of ungodly smells, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Because the water greatly nourished the pain from my now bruised and bloodied knees and elbows. Escaping our way past the quicksand of sludge and water, like we were no better than a group of rats in a pipe, our suffrage through the tunnels was by no means over. Just when I was ready to give up, to let the claustrophobic jaws of the tunnel swallow me, ending my pain, I finally saw a light at the end of the tunnel. Although I felt the most overwhelming relief, I couldn't help but wonder what was waiting for us at the very end. Was it more pain and suffering? Although I didn't know, I also didn't care. I just wanted this claustrophobic nightmare to come to an end, by any means necessary. Finally reaching the light at the end of the tunnel, I impatiently waited my turn to escape forever out of this darkness. Trapped behind Aaron in front of me, I could hear the weakness in his voice as he struggled to breathe, and to my surprise, I had little sympathy for him. Not because I blamed him for what we were all being put through, that his invitation was what led to this cavern of horrors. It was simply because I wanted out of this hole, and right now, he was preventing that. Once Aaron had finally crawled out, disappearing into the light, I felt another wave of relief come over me. It was now my turn to escape. But as soon as my hands reach out to touch the veil of light before me, I feel as I'm suddenly and forcibly pulled by my wrists out of the tunnel and back onto the surface of planet Earth. Peering around me, I see the familiar faces of Tyler and the others, staring back at me on the floor of the jungle. But then I look up, and what I see is a group of complete strangers staring down at us. In matching clothing to one another, these strange men and women were dressed head to barefoot in a black fabric, fashioned into loose trousers and long-sleeve shirts. And, just like our captors, they had dark hair but far less resemblance to the people of this country. Once Haley and Sophie had joined us on the surface alongside our original abductors, these strange groups of people, whom we met on both ends of the tunnel, bring us all to our feet and order us to walk. Moving us along a pathway that cuts through the trees of the jungle, only moments later do we see where it is we are. We were now in a village, a small rural village hidden inside of the jungle. Entering the village on a pathway lined with wooden planks, we see a sparse scattering of wooden houses with straw rooftops, as well as a number of animal pens containing pigs, chickens, and goats. We then see more of these very same people taking part in their everyday chores. Upon seeing us, they turn up from what it is they're doing and stare at us intriguingly. Again, I saw they had similar characteristics, but while some of them were lighter in skin tone, I now saw that some of them were much darker. We also saw more of the children, and like the adults, some appeared fully Caucasian, but others, while not Vietnamese, were also of a darker skin. But amongst these people, we also saw faces that were far more familiar to us. Among these people were a handful of adults who, although dressed like the others in full black clothing, not only had lighter skin, but also lighter hair, as though they came directly from the outside world. Were these the missing tourists? Is this what happened to them? Like us, they were abducted by a strange community of villagers who lived deep inside this jungle? I didn't know if they really were the missing tourists. We couldn't know for sure. But I saw one among them, a tall, very thin middle-aged woman with blonde hair that was slowly turning gray. Well, that was the contents of Sarah's diary. But it is by no means the end of her story. What I failed to mention beforehand is after I read her diary, I tried doing some research on Sarah online. I found out she was born and raised outside Salt Lake City, where she then studied and graduated BYU. But to my surprise, I found out Sarah had already shared her story. If you're now asking why I happen to be sharing Sarah's diary when she's already made her story public, well, that's where the big twist comes in. You see, the story Sarah shared online is vastly different to what she wrote in her diary. According to her public story, Sarah and her friends were invited on a jungle expedition by a group of paranormal researchers. Apparently, in the beach town where Sarah worked, tourists had mysteriously been going missing, which the paranormal researchers were investigating. According to these researchers, there was an unmapped trail within the jungle, and anyone who tried to follow the trail would mysteriously vanish. But in Sarah's account of this jungle expedition, although they did find the unmapped trail, Sarah, her friends, and the paranormal researchers were not abducted by a secret community of villagers, as written in the diary. I won't tell you how Sarah's public story ends, because you can read it for yourself online. So, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, what is the truth? What is the real story? Is there even a real story here, or are both the public and diary entries completely fabricated? I guess I'll leave that up to you. If you feel like it, leave your thoughts and theories in the comments. Who knows? Maybe someone out there knows the truth of this whole thing. If you were to ask me what I think is the truth, I actually do have a theory. My theory is that at least one of these stories is true. I just don't know which one that is. Well, I think that's everything. I'll be sure to provide an update if anything new comes afloat. But in the meantime, everyone stay safe out there. After all, the world is truly an unforgiving place.